Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Katie and today we are going to be looking at the 5 books that I've read since January, which are Christian reads. I've also read some non-Christian fiction books up there, which I may do a video on if you are interested, but I know this is more of a faith-based channel, so that's why I'm going down the Christian book route, but just let me know if you're interested and I'll be sure to do one on those as well. Okay, so it has been a long time no see. I think the last time I did a video was in December. You can probably hear in my voice, I haven't been well. My voice has been all over the place with a cold. We've had sickness bugs, we've had flu, we've just had all sorts going through the family since January, but we're finally all on the mend. Dan has taken the boys out to the Metro Centre, which is a big shopping centre here, so I've got time to sit down and film some videos. Hooray, finally. It just feels like this year so far I've been like, oh, I wanted to do so much with YouTube and I just haven't had the chance. Okay, so the first book that I read is by C.S. Lewis and it is called the Screwtape Letters. I don't know if you've heard about this one, it's really famous, but this book was a really interesting read. It was quite hard to get into at first because it's from the perspective of a demon. So before you're like, what? This book focuses on a guy who has a demon assigned to him and he's just kind of going through his life. He's meeting people and he's making mistakes, but as the story progresses, he becomes more and more Christian and there's a demon attached to him who is trying to prevent all of that. So he's trying to get him in with the wrong friendship group, he's trying to split him up from his Christian girlfriend, he's trying to put ideas in his head that money is really important and all these different things. So it's really interesting because it gives you the point of view of how the devil is trying to sabotage people's lives all of the time, and it's quite insightful in that way, and it's also quite intelligent in the way that it is written, and you can see how deceiving the devil can be and how kind of ideas planted in our mind can really take us off course. So it was a really good read. I would probably give this like 4 stars. The only thing that holds it back from being 5 stars is that it is written in an older English, which is harder to understand, it's harder to get into, and you really have to kind of concentrate. And sometimes I had to go back over what I just read because it just wasn't sinking in. But I did get some really good points. And the other thing is that it refers to our Father as the devil, so it's really hard to kind of keep reminding yourself that he's talking about his father as in the devil rather than God. So as someone who was raised Christian, I kept getting really confused with that and thinking, God's not like that. And then I was like, oh no, he's not talking about God. So yeah, it wasn't one that I could just pick up and read on a night time when I was tired because I had to really concentrate on it. So what I did was I read a chapter on a morning when I was feeling focused and like I could kind of take in what I was reading. But I've highlighted some pieces and I've put here on chapter 10. I'll just read you a little excerpt from it. So in chapter 10 it says, "My dear Wormwood," Wormwood is the demon, "I was delighted to hear from Triptweeze that your patient has made some," and the patient is the guy that he's assigned to. "My dear Wormwood, I was delighted to hear from Triptweeze that your patient has made some very desirable new acquaintances, that you seem to have used this event in a really promising manner. I gather that the middle-aged married couple who call at his office are just the sort of people we want him to know. Rich, smart, superficially intellectual, and brightly sceptical about everything in the world." And it goes on and describes these people as ungodly, and he's so happy that this guy has made these acquaintances. So I've just written, "Our friends are very important. They have an influence on you, so be careful and guarded of the company that you keep." And I think it's really important that we are aware of who we surround ourselves with. So there's lots of good little pull-outs in this book. I'm so sorry about my voice. I can hear it's so nasally, but there's nothing I can do about it. I really want to get these videos filmed. So this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one that I read was just this biography on Moody. So this is the guy that has got a whole Bible college in his name, and this is just a biography about his life. I would probably give this a 3.5 stars. If you are interested in Moody and learning about his life, I would highly recommend this. If you are not, then it's something that you can totally skip. It's not like a must read or anything, but this guy was just on fire for God, and yeah, he's touched many lives across the world, so he's really good to kind of look into if you're interested in that kind of thing. The next one is a fiction novel, and this is called Redeeming Love. So one of my subscribers, Gail, recommended this to me when I met her in the bookshop, and I am so glad that I listened to her recommendation and got this. A few of you also in the past have recommended this to me. It's by Francine Rivers, and it is just the most beautifully written, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking story that I have ever read. I don't know if any fiction book will live up to this one. It was just, I could not put it down. It took me days and days to read, but oh my goodness, I was just totally lost in this story. So it's based on the story of Hosea, and if you're anything like me, I've read my Bible through a few times and I could not think what the story of Hosea was, but the gist of it is that God tells Hosea to marry a prostitute, and that's what this book is about. The book starts right from her childhood and goes all the way through this girl's life, and it's just, oh, you just really feel for this poor girl, and it's honestly one of the best books I've ever read. But I do want to put the disclaimer out there that this will trigger any kind of child abuse, sexual abuse, anything like that. So please be cautious picking this up, because it does go into detail about some of those things. But yeah, it's such a good book. It sounds weird saying it's such a good book when it talks about those things, but honestly it's just so beautifully written and such a wonderful story. So yeah, this one gets 5 stars from me, and it's very rare I give a book 5 stars. So following on from that, because I fell in love with Francine Rivers' writing in that book, I picked up this one, which is called A Lineage of Grays, and it's a really thick book. It's like almost as thick as the Bible. And the text isn't particularly huge in it either. But this book, I read some reviews before I purchased it, and some people were saying she's adding to the Bible, we are instructed not to do that, and that kind of thing. But I don't get the impression that she's adding to the Bible at all. This is a fictional book, and she makes that very clear. There's a foreword that goes into that. She says this is a work of historical fiction. The outline of the story is provided by the Bible, and I've started with the facts provided for us there. Building on that foundation, I've created action, dialogue, internal motivations, and in some cases additional characters that I feel are consistent with the biblical record. I've attempted to remain true to the scriptural message in all points, adding only what is necessary to aid in our understanding of that message. So when I'm reading this, I know that this is not what the Bible says about these women. They go into conversations that we do not know that these women had, but it's such a good work of fiction where you're able to see these biblical women in a more holistic way, and it just really helped bring those stories alive to me. So the 5 biblical women that it goes into detail about are Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. I would definitely give this book 4.5 stars. It just really brings those stories alive. My favourite story has been about Rahab. I was just there with her in Jericho City, waiting for the Israelites to come and march around that wall, and Francine really captures how the people would have felt at that time, how full of angst everyone was and how worried everyone was, and then also how relieved they felt when the Israelites just marched around and didn't do anything and confused. Just really brings that story to life, and she adds like conversations that Rahab's having with her family and her dad, and that are kind of like, this is ridiculous, and Rahab's like, just trust the Lord, just trust the Lord. It's honestly such a good read. So if you just want to be able to put yourself in these women's stories a little bit more, this is definitely a great way to do that. Another great thing about this is it could be used for a women's Bible study group, or at least a women's study group on the women of the Bible, because what it does is at the end of each woman's story, it poses a lot of questions, like a lot of questions. So there's a section called Seek and Find. So at the very end, it shows you what the Bible actually says about these women. It has questions, and there's a lot of questions that you can go over. I mean, there's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pages of questions here on the book of Ruth, just to give you an idea. And they're not small questions either. There's like a lot of questions. So you could really spend a full year studying these women, which I might actually do with my church. I might put the idea out there and see what they think about that. But yeah, it's just a great book all around, this one. And then the last one that I've read is called Wonder Women of the Bible. I think I've spoken about this one before. It just gives a brief overview of the story of a lot of women from the Bible. So this one talks about Rahab, Deborah, Esther, Ruth, Dorcas, Anna, Martha, Priscilla, Phoebe, Jael, Abigail, the wise woman of Abel, the Syrophoenician woman, the Galilean women, Hagar and Elizabeth. So it goes through a lot of the women and it just kind of tells their story. And then this one also has questions at the end. It doesn't have nowhere near as many as the Lineage of Grays book does, but it has a few select questions at the bottom there which you can reflect on yourself. I wouldn't necessarily do this one as a women's study, although you could. I would just do this one on my own. But yeah, and I would give this one probably, I would have scored it higher, but after reading A Lineage of Grays, I would probably give this one maybe 3.5 stars. Because it's still good, it's just nowhere near as good as that other one. Okay, so those are the 5 Christian books that I have been reading so far this year. I'll be sure to keep updating you as I'm reading these books because I know a lot of you are interested in Christian books and are always on the hunt for recommendations, just like I am. If you have any really good recommendations, drop them in the comments below and hopefully I'll be able to pick a few of them up when I'm next at the Christian bookshop and do a review on them as well. Okay, so that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in this kind of content. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!